Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney. Usually, I would have Jacqueline next to me, but times are unusual, so alas, it is just me. And hockey is back. We have had technically 3 Blackhawks games so far, 2 that actually meant anything. So if you've been around since the beginning of the podcast, or if you've gone back and listened to past podcast episodes, you would know that the 2 of us started a hockey podcast at the absolute worst possible time, in the middle of the summer. Who does that? Well, following in the trend of starting things at the worst possible time, I am shooting our first video not after 2 Blackhawks wins, one being a shutout and one being Game 1 of the qualifying round. No, I am shooting our first video after a horrible loss in Game 2 to the Edmonton Oilers. So, let's talk about it, eh? I posted a pregame article before Game 2 asking the Blackhawks 3 questions heading into Game 2. So let's see how they managed to answer those questions through their play on the ice. So question number 1 for the Blackhawks heading into Game number 2 was, can you stay out of the box? Their answer, no, they cannot stay out of the box. They gave Edmonton 5 power plays. Thankfully for the Blackhawks, Edmonton Oilers only scored on 1 of their power plays. Not that it really mattered, since the game ended up being 6-3, not in our favor. But they couldn't stay out of the box, and that is going to be a terrible trend moving forward if they do not fix that. Question number 2 that I had for the Blackhawks heading into game number 2. Are you ready for Edmonton to score? So, my thought behind this is, we all know that the Edmonton Oilers are a high-flying team. They can basically score on will, right? They have Connor McDavid, they have Leon Draisaitl. They're going to score goals. Well, what you have to do going into a game against a team like that is you have to be ready for them to score and not get discouraged when a puck goes behind your goaltender into the net. You have to be ready to respond, either tighten up your defense, fix what went wrong the first time, or you have to return the favor and put the puck behind their goaltender. So, in game number 2, were the Blackhawks ready for the Edmonton Oilers to score? I would say the answer is sort of, but not really. So it got to a point where the Blackhawks were sort of catching up. It was 4-3 at one point, and they did tie the game a couple of times. But I think where they went wrong is they were not ready for Connor McDavid to score 2 goals within the first 5 minutes of the game, one being on the first shift of the game. So they were chasing the game the entire time. Of course, like I said, they did end up tying it a few times, but when you're stuck chasing a game the entire time instead of ever holding a lead, that seems like it would get a little bit exhausting. And if you're exhausted against a team that has Connor McDavid as their captain, well, that is bad news for you. And it was bad news for the Blackhawks. The good news is they hung in with them for a little bit. The bad news is Connor McDavid got a hat trick. He scored 2 goals in the first 5 minutes of the game, and the Blackhawks lost 6-3. So they were not totally prepared. They were semi-prepared, but ultimately Edmonton came out on top. Now, my third question for the Blackhawks heading into Game 2 of this qualifying round against the Edmonton Oilers was, is Corey Crawford actually ready? So as we all know by now, or should know, Crawford tested positive for COVID-19. He missed most of training camp. He came in for the final couple days, and obviously he traveled with the team to Edmonton. He played half of the exhibition game, sharing that with Malcolm Subban. He played Game 1, got the win, gave up 4 goals, but again, Edmonton scores at will. So going into game number 2, I was very curious, is he actually ready? Is he up to game speed? because we know that he is a 2-time cup winner. He generally comes out for the big games and plays well, but that's at the end of the season, when you have a full season to tweak what is going wrong and be up to game speed. Obviously, I would hope you would be at the end of a 82-game season, my goodness. So, was Corey Crawford actually ready for game number 2? I'm going to say that is also kind of undecided. So, judging by the first 5 minutes, if you weren't watching the game, you would probably say no. Connor McDavid scores on the first shift. He scores 4 minutes later. What is going on? Well, if you watched the game, this was the 3rd game of the day in the Edmonton Oilers arena, and the puck was bouncing all over the place. It was terrible. The ice did not seem very good, but that's also not an excuse because the ice is bad for both teams. But on both of those goals, the puck was bouncing. They were great shots by McDavid, not taking anything away from him because he is the best hockey player in the world. But you cannot put that all on your goaltender. Now, there were other shots that were deflected, some that went off of our own players, but when the opposing team scores 6 goals, was he really ready, or was it bad puck luck? And that is where I am kind of undecided. He looked good in the second period. I don't know. I'm assuming he will get the start in game 3. I don't see Coach Colleton pulling him yet. Maybe if there is another, God forbid, please don't, but if there is another high-scoring game by Edmonton where the Hawks come out on the wrong side of it, maybe we go to Malcolm Subban and see what he can do instead. But with the track record that Crawford has, I believe we go back to him in game 3, and I guess we will see if he's ready and see how he responds. Hopefully well. That is what we are all hoping for. I'm wearing a Crawford jersey. He is my favorite Blackhawks player. I don't know. So now that we went over how they responded to my 3 questions, obviously, because they all read the article that I posted a few hours before the game. Since we've gone over how they answered those questions, I have 3 questions going into game 3 for the Blackhawks against the Edmonton Oilers. Question number 1. Will the real Jonathan Taves please stand up? So if you watched both games, game number 1, Captain Jonathan Taves, world beater. He looked amazing. He looked like he came off of this break absolutely rejuvenated, ready to take on the world. He wanted to score all the goals. He wanted to get all the assists. Game number 2... Exactly. My cat yelling in the background. That is how I felt about Jonathan Taves' performance in game number 2. He wasn't the worst player on the ice, but compared to game number 1, how do you go from that to what we saw in game number 2? Question number 2. Is Drake Caggiula the key to the Blackhawks' success against the Oilers? Now, before you start laughing, if you aren't aware, Drake Caggiula is a former Edmonton Oiler. We got him in the trade involving Brandon Manning, and he usually plays pretty well against his former team. He was in game 1. He got suspended for a headshot on Tyler Ennis, which I don't necessarily know if I agree with, but it's a headshot, so you don't want to argue that because you want those out of the game. Anyway, he was not in game 2 due to the 1-game suspension, but he will be back Wednesday night for game 3. So, if the Blackhawks manage to pull out a win in game 3, do we then go on to say that Drake Caggiula is officially the key to the success of the Chicago Blackhawks organization in the 2020 playoffs? Or qualifiers. Even though they say they're playoff goals, but this isn't the playoffs yet, I'm still confused. We say playoffs for some things. We say they're not actually in the playoffs yet. They're playing to qualify for the playoffs, but they're scoring playoff goals. NHL. Question number 3. The final question that I have for the Chicago Blackhawks heading in to game number 3 Wednesday night. This one might sound a little familiar, so here we go. Can you stay out of the box? Well, there you have it. That is the first actual video on this YouTube channel. The other ones are in the podcast playlist. You can go check those out if you want a longer form. The older episodes will have both Jacqueline and I going back and forth. The last couple have been shorty episodes, stands for shorthanded goal, you score a shorty. But also they are typically shorter than the episodes we recorded together. The last couple have been a little long just because I've had actual hockey to talk about. But if you want to check out the podcast, you can check that out over on the podcast playlist, or it is available wherever you stream your podcasts, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever. So thank you guys for tuning in, and let's see how they respond in Game 3. Hoping for the best. Thank you all for watching. Please hit that subscribe button to catch more From Center Ice content. If you could, hit the like button on this video, maybe share it with a friend or two, and while you're here, check out the podcast playlist and catch up on some old episodes. We will catch y'all next time. Bye!